Hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the setup on this particular airplane, the E-Flite F-16 80mm. This is going to be my first time doing one of these videos, so I hope you can bear with me. I may have to stitch some parts of it together to make it make sense, so you might see some random cutting in, cutting out, that kind of fun stuff. I am going to distribute the Spectrum IX12 file and a version that should supposedly be compatible with the DX series radios as well. But this is pretty easy to do. It's really only took me maybe an hour total to get everything set up, and the biggest pain in the butt was rerouting the cables for the elevator servos. Well, more like the stabilator servos. So currently the jet works with full elevator and aileron authority combined into one, so they tend to call these Tailerons. I don't know if there's a better term for it, but we'll just go ahead and work with that. So you can see that my stabilators in the back work for both pitch and roll. I also changed out the servos in the stabilators just so they would be a bit more powerful. The ones that the plane came with are not very precise, and I'm pretty sure they didn't have a whole lot of torque either. If you need an idea of how much deflection I'm getting, I used a pitch measurement device, and I'm getting at least 90mm up and down. So it's pretty crazy. This is one of the reasons why I can flat spin this particular jet, is having this level of control authority. I can actually hold this in a pure high alpha just with this only. That's all it really needs. But to get it to flat spin, I have to stall it from a high alpha and then pull in one direction. And this stab will induce the stall and make it start spinning. It's really quite cool. It's the same thing I used to do on my F-22 in the couple of uploads you may have seen. So to set that up, you have to have your receiver set up with the two stabs on independent channels. It can't be on a Y connector. It will not work. So this is a real rat's nest in here. I'll do my best to explain it. I don't remember exactly where I've set them up, so I have to pull up my IX12 to double check. So my right aileron is channel 2, which would be this one. My right elevator is channel 3, which supposedly would be this one, but I plugged them in backwards, and it is the left elevator that it's referring to. You'll see that it says 1 on here, if you can see it clearly. The amount of effort it takes to get these to be lined up with one another by manually trimming them is really obnoxious, and that's putting it lightly. The way FMS engineered this jet for Horizon, it's very difficult to reach the screw point for the stabs because the screws are on the inside of the plane, and there's a big bulge for the tail, and you'll kind of see it right there. Hopefully you can see it well. So getting from here to here with a screwdriver is not fun, and it's very easy to strip the screws doing it that way. So once I got the screw pretty much where I want it to be, within, you know, maybe a millimeter or two of being aligned with the other stab, I just went in and gave it sub trim just to get it lined up correctly. I think there's still a little bit of a difference between them, so I did eventually end up trimming them on my left trimmer, so I can actually use these to independently trim them for roll. I did notice that there's a bit of a right roll tendency that I've had to counteract in flight, so that kind of helps a bit too. So on to the next steps here. This is also set up with full flaperons as well. Again, these have to be independent channels, so as I was talking about earlier, channel 2 is aileron, channel 3 is stabilator, whatever you want to call it. Rudder gear is 5, left aileron is channel 6, followed by the other stab on channel, or not the other stab, sorry, the nose wheel on channel 7, and then the other stab is on channel 8. I have the nose wheel set up so that I can trim it on my right trimmer here. I found that works really well. I really don't like taxiing a plane and then having to pick it up and then adjust it with a screwdriver and then put it back down, and then it still doesn't go straight. Pick it up, put it back down, try again. It's so much easier to just trim it out with a little trimmer here. If the gear were out, you'd notice it. That also let me mix the nose wheel so that it does not work while the gear are up. So you notice you can't hear anything in there. It saves a little bit of power. Very negligible, but it's there. With the flaps, one of the coolest things about this jet is that it still flies really well. In fact, it flies even better with flaps. I have mine currently set to deploy a bit of upward stab movement as the flaps come out. It's very minuscule. It used to be closer to this when they would deploy, but now they're very, very, very light. In the upload I just made with this jet, the standard deflection that I had them at for flap deployment was causing the plane to come in like this. And you can fly it like that, but it's a lot more challenging if you're not expecting it to do that. So right now they only move a little bit, which is really all they need to do to get it into that high alpha approach, because the stabs are way more effective than you might think, especially when you're balancing right here. This is about where my balance point is. Now, interestingly enough, let's get my rudder or ruler over here. Interestingly enough, the manual calls for a center of gravity of 95 millimeters back from the leading edge of the wing. So if we look at it right here, 95 millimeters back is right here. But 140 millimeters is where I'm balancing currently, which is right here. And that's the exact image that the manual uses. That's exactly where it shows you that it should balance at 95. This plane flies so much better on 140. It's not even the same plane anymore. And the fact that I can flat spin it with a 5200 pack is phenomenal, because I couldn't do that before. So anyway, back to setup. For this, you need to have your model set up as, if you can see my screen, Flaperon wing type, and then you need dual elevator and one rudder. And the reason why I'm not using a Taileron wing type or tail type is because any adjustments you make to the wings will affect the stabs as well. Not only just trim, but any mixes that you do. So for example, I've got a high G mix, or at least that's what I like to call it. A lot of fighter jets, when they go to pull into a tight turn to do their minimum radius turn, the flaps will deploy.
High G flaps. And
as the elevator comes out, the flaps pull out with it, which tightens the turn and keeps the wing from stalling as easily in the 90-degree position that they're in when they're doing that pull. Similarly, I've got another mix for high alpha as well, which I'm hoping works. I had to do some adjustment to it, and I forgot to test it out last time. I was in a more narrow area to fly and didn't really trust it. I mean, I really don't even need any of these mixes. I can high alpha this thing without it. I just like getting something into an alpha without having to play around with throttle or anything else. I just like to get it in like it's a normal flight mode. As I said, literally just pulling it like this will force it to fly at a 45 to 60 degree angle. And with enough throttle, you can make it just go in a straight line. It's really stupid. And you'll notice that a lot of other people who fly these planes tend to only use, for example, like the RC Geek is a great guy and he makes awesome stuff, but he flies these planes at, I think it is 20 millimeters up, maybe 30 at most. So let's get this deflection meter set up just right. And this is how much they're pretty much flying with, up and down. Mine is completely off the chart. Up and down. But the key difference between how I'm flying and how other people are flying is that I use a lot of Expo. And the RC Geek will tell you, or any other reviewer will tell you, 5 to 15% Expo. On a plane like mine, that much Expo is shockingly low. So much to the point where the plane would basically be uncontrollable. You would be doing Cobra maneuvers constantly. So right now you can see I'm at 85% Expo for pitch, which actually puts me in the recommended throw range for most reviewers who have talked about this particular plane. But if I do that with, let's say, 10% Expo, just moving the stick up and down slightly is crazy. It almost puts me to half of my throw just by barely moving the stick. So I prefer to stay in the high Expo range at 85%. I could probably go even higher, because when I move halfway through the stick, I'm getting a more controllable pitch, and I'm getting a more controllable roll, and it just makes it a lot easier to do things with this jet. Now, the next thing I gotta show is the rates, and I actually do fly with two different types of rates. The rates you're seeing right now are 150%, which is what I fly all of my planes on. But a thing I've been doing recently with jets, especially ones that have retractable landing gear, is setting them up so that they have low rates as the gear are deployed, kind of like a real jet would have with a flight control computer. Any jet, even my airliner up here, when you deploy the gear, they all become more sluggish. The flight control computers just will not allow you to have full authority. The only thing that's missing in the equation is that a real flight control computer wouldn't let you deflect the stabilators or the ailerons this much, depending on your speed. Like if you're going, Mach 1, they're only going to move like this much. Whereas, if you're in low speed flight, you're going to get the full deflection, which is what you need. But you can emulate that type of flight control computer by just remembering that, Expo's your friend. The more Expo you have, the less you need to worry about over control at speed. And if you need that authority, you have it, versus arbitrarily limiting yourself to 20 millimeters up and 20 millimeters down. And then when you need to do a maneuver that does require the full movement of the stick, you can do it by pulling to the extent of the stick, rather than being, well, this is as far as I can go. I've maxed out my elevator authority. I'm going to crash. I've seen it happen so many times, and hopefully this might help you guys with that. But check out the range reduction on this. Can't talk over this. So there's my range reduction. So I'm currently operating this at 50% Expo on all surfaces except for the rudder. Rudder always stays at 85%, because you don't really want to use rudder much in a jet, unless it's the Viper jet, which for whatever reason can hold a knife edge with rudder without snap rolling. This one will snap roll. My Griffin will snap roll. The airliner attempts to snap roll. It's just something to do with the way jets are, and perhaps the rudder being outside of any kind of maybe it's just too high up in the air, and the force causes it to roll over. I'm not entirely sure. You can't even counteract it with aileron. It just doesn't do anything. So that's as much authority as I have in low rates, which is still 50 millimeters up and 50 millimeters down. It's ridiculous. It's more than what, like, my lowest rates are higher than a lot of reviewers' highest rates. Well beyond, even. This is what allows me to fly my jets the way I do. It allows me to get the scale flying surface detail and scale appearance while it's in the air. You can't fly a jet like this on arbitrary rates and then get, expect to get a really good performance out of it, because it's just not going to do what the real jet is capable of doing. Like, I could probably make this jet do a Cobra maneuver, which the real F-16 I don't think it can actually do. But the only thing that concerns me is these linkages. They're not very robust, and it's all plastic, whereas opposed to my free-wing jets, they have metal on metal, and it is so much more robust and so much stronger. Like the control arm is metal, the servo or the ball link is metal. The part connecting to it is plastic, but it's still stronger plastic than the stuff FMS likes to use. If you twist these things too hard, you'll even see the plastic start to deform and become, like, the color will actually change, because it's just getting torsion force put on it. It's actually kind of sucks. It really sucks. I like FMS, I really do, but I just feel like they could really improve their linkage quality significantly. It's always been their weak spot as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, no, but especially when the, I forgot to mention too, when the flaps are out, the only control surface is the stabs. So this prevents adverse yaw. Let me go ahead and pull the gear up and I'll explain. If you're not familiar with adverse yaw, you should be. It is potentially very dangerous if you're flying a plane at yourself and it's not heading in the direction you want it to be. Essentially what happens is these are giant flaps, right? They're giant flaps, but they're also ailerons, so they're flaperons. Okay, when these are down completely, if they were to move, let me go ahead and disable the mix that I've got controlling them so they can move, and I'll illustrate what's going on. Let's see here. I've used every one of my mixes. I pretty much do this with all my jets. It should be aileron to right aileron. There we are. This is on a combo switch, so it will only activate under certain conditions. So switch F has to be, yeah, there we go. It's either one. It's either switch D, which is my flaps, if either one of those is active, or if switch F is active, because I want sometimes just to have Taileron movement just to see what my roll is. Maybe it's too axial, not axial enough. If I want to play with it and figure out what the problem is, I can deal it with that particular mix. But back to the back to what I was talking about. So let's go ahead and turn this off. Now, it may not be immediately apparent, but if you fly this jet like a lot of people do, where they do make the flaperon change to the receiver, what you end up getting is, like I said, adverse yaw. So this right here is what causes adverse yaw. You have one aileron that's unable to point all the way up and one that's pointing all the way down. All this does is cause the plane to yaw in the direction opposite of the movement. So imagine this one is flat right now. What ends up happening is this aileron on the left side with my left hand will cause the plane to drag more, which will pull it this way. So as you try to roll, what you find yourself doing is not just rolling, but you're rolling in the, I mean, not this way, rather. You find yourself rolling this way, but your nose is pointed in the wrong direction. So you're not rolling in a coordinated turn. You are rolling in this weird, kind of strange, uncoordinated turn. And if you're landing towards yourself, say you're standing over there, and you go to roll away, but that particular aileron catches it, it'll point it right at you, and you can hit yourself with the plane. And you know, you don't want to hurt yourself, obviously, and you don't want to destroy these things because they're incredibly expensive. So avoiding adverse yaw is as simple as disabling the flaperon movement on these particular planes. So the only roll you're going to get is going to come from the Tailerons. That's how I have mine set up. And it only does that when the flaps are deployed to avoid adverse yaw effects. But I still want the roll control that I get from the ailerons with the Tailerons when the flaps are up. The second they go down, all I'm getting is I'm just getting roll from here. And it works really well. You can see it in some of my videos that I've put up. Hopefully this kind of thing helps you guys. I can go through the details of all the mixing if you ever want to know more about it. I kind of hop from topic to topic, so maybe next time I'll write everything down and just talk about it one by one rather than you know, kind of going through and trying my best to keep it from being a stream of consciousness. Before we go too, let's demo the center of gravity for those of you who would question whether or not I'm being truthful. I don't know why you would. This is right here is the normal center of gravity. So I'm going to pick it up from right here and hold it upside down. And I will do it without dropping the plane, hopefully. Okay, let's see here. There's that second panel line. And it's actually a little further back than I was saying it was. a little bit further more. Here we go. Right there. So you can see clearly that my balance point is right there with a 5200 Z pack, which is what I fly because they're cheap and they produce really good power. And I haven't had a single one of them fail, contrary to popular opinion. And you can't really beat the price. I mean, you can, as of saying this, currently you can get them, what is it, 2 for like 120 bucks on Amazon. It's like an incredible price, which is this pack right here. I also use, in my setup, I use, what do you call this stuff? Craftsman shelf liner, which as the batteries heat up, it just grips them and keeps them from moving. It's really, really good stuff. I only need one of these straps. Also because to get that CG, I actually push this all the way back as far as I can get it. To get that CG on top of having this particular battery installed, I also put weight in the tail. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different quarter-ounce weights. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 ounce, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 ounces, 2.5 ounces of tail weight. Produces a really good counterweight to these rather heavy packs. 100C 5200 100C 5200 milliamp packs. So there you go. There is my F-16. Hopefully you guys enjoy. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments and I'll do what I can to get back to you as soon as I can.